How long have you been out? You know what? I was looking at you, but I was looking at you.
Let Olive smell him.
Can you tell me your name again?
Howard Wendell.
Howard Wendell.
When we were in the academy, we were taught in law enforcement to marijuana was an absolutely bad thing to have around and be involved with, and we were brought up in the academy to learn that we were out there to do a job, and that was to bring people such as those that were using marijuana illegally, because it was federally against the law, really then, even more so now than it is. But given the educational background in which one takes and goes through to understand what this plant's all about, it has totally curved my outlook as to what the plant used to be, the stigma that surrounded it from before as opposed to now. Today, it's something that's very real. It's helping thousands and thousands of kids and people all over the world. We personally take care of an awful lot of kids that are they're afflicted right now with epilepsy. My son and myself do an awful lot of work in this field and have seen miracles. I'm seriously telling you, miracles in front of our eyes happen. Back in 2006, I started looking at this a little more aggressively as an individual who was completely ignorant to what it really was, that we were, back in the days in the 70s, were throwing people in jail for it. Didn't understand it, wasn't educated, and I think what people need to do is to be educated on the fact that this plant is nothing more than a plant. The stigma that surrounds this beautiful culture is unfortunate, but it's helping those, and those that are being helped are now having a voice about this and making themselves known. We work with Aubrey Hill, who we've developed an oil called Aubrey's Oil, and we are using it in capacity against with epilepsy and seeing seizures go from 30 to 0. Aubrey Hill's been here now 3 weeks. You might try to ascertain from her exactly what we were talking about. She's had no seizures. And the only seizure she has had is when we weren't able to get the medicine to her in time.
Sure.
Yes.
So, and then you said you had this conversion of thinking to seeing cannabis as medicine. How did you start getting into treating patients and helping people out?
Being a patient myself, I suffered from glaucoma.
Oh, yeah?
And also I had some severe migraine headaches, which debilitated me back in 2000. And I was working up in trees and things like that nature for our company up in Groveland, and I got hurt and had to leave the job. But I was a patient. I first learned of its therapeutic applications by myself. I smoked it, and I was having. They had me on antidepressant medicine, and I have a story about that, but that's all in itself, by itself. We'll do that another time. Right now, I was a patient. And I saw the therapeutic value, and then I started doing research. The more research I did, the more inclined I was to figure out what it was and how I could be part of this circle of helping people. And we started to look at the science that was being developed by those that were taking that route to determine what those cannabinoids actually offered to the human body. Mm-hmm. And when we were looking at the different types of cannabinoids that was available for application, we come to understand that there were different applications for a lot of different cannabinoids. That's real interesting stuff when you get involved doing that. And it wasn't us saying so much what was happening, but science itself was speaking, raising its head up and telling us, hey, take a look at what's happening here. Mm-hmm. Realize what this plant really does do. Now we've come across a lot of cannabinoids, and some of them we've got some facts on, and some of them we don't. And some of them we don't have any information about them at all, but bear in mind there's research going on currently which will tell us what new things are to come. I just learned the other day, and I've been in this business a long time, about THCV. It's the only cannabinoid in the cannabis picture that offers appetite suppressant, believe that or not.
So from your perspective as a former police officer, and like you said, someone who's gone from that view to seeing how you do now,
sure.
What do you think is the biggest roadblock that keeps officers from going in that direction? Like, how come are officers really that unaware, uneducated, or are they just following orders?
Let me just say this: You know, law enforcement officers have my full respect for what they do because I had to live that life. Okay, they do a job. They're being paid to do a job today. That's what they're being paid to do. Just like us. Maybe we didn't like to wash cars, but if we had to go out and wash them every day, that's our job. That's what we'd have to do. They're under that same kind of a remand. They need to do the job that they're being paid for, whether they like it or not. That's what their job is. And unfortunate, there's many officers out there that really are educated, that really have a feeling for about it, but they're silent and they keep it to themselves, and it's looked down by their fellow officers who are not educated and have only been educated by the academies in which they've been graduated from. Myself, I've learned an awful lot in this industry, and I've learned that people out there hurt from all different colors and races and creeds, and being able to help these people in such a manner by using a plant that God gave us to use. It's a crime just to have it illegally available to us in how it should be. So,
Yeah. One more question, if you don't mind.
certainly.
How does law enforcement view organizations like law enforcement against prohibition?
Well, you know, my law enforcement career was many years ago. It's hard for me to today try to take a position and law enforcement stance that, like I said, I don't begrudge them because they got a job to do.
Well, then maybe let me phrase it like this.
Sure, go ahead.
How are efforts to end prohibition viewed? Like, are there police officers? You know, from your perspective, like when you were in the department, was that even a thing?
No.
You know, were there officers who were publicly or even privately against
in fact,
prohibition?
Back in the 70s, when we were involved with the enforcement of law enforcement of cannabis and marijuana, you could go to jail in the town where I was, a law enforcement officer, for a seat in your car. It was looked down upon, and after I got educated and found out what the government had done to the people since the 1930s, when they took a patent out on this product, okay, knowing they had knowledge of its availability to help people, but they subdued it, they suppressed it over the years and years and years. And it's just now that we are rising up over everybody and making known through scientific information that's become available that this plant really offers an awful lot of therapeutic value for those in need.